Marjorie. It is so great to have you here today.
I'm glad to be here, Mindy.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. So, I'm super excited for today's conversation because you are someone who I deeply admire. I've known you now for 12 years, and I've watched you go from being in a marriage that just was not healthy and a single mom to going to college, getting your bachelor's degree, getting your master's degree. And you're so bold, you're authentic, and you show up in the world as a leader. You're a trailblazer. That I've known since the day I met you. But I would love to hear more today. And I know my audience is going to want to hear more today about the work that you're doing in the world as a Black woman over the age of 50 in
hmm
a world that was dominated by male voices. So,
hmm
yeah, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got here?
Well, it's been a long journey, like you said, 12 years. And when you met me in 2013, I was just coming out of a very traumatic divorce that had left me homeless and penniless, and I was rebuilding my life. And I wrote a book about my experience. Who the hell do you think you are? And then I started a nonprofit organization for women who had experienced the same thing that I had, which was emotional and financial abuse in marriages, and ran that for several years. And during that time, I just entered my 40s. So I entered college the first time at 42, and then went on to get my master's. And my undergrad is in sociology. My graduate is in industrial and organizational psychology. And so as I went out into the workforce and into the entrepreneurial world, I started to notice a pattern with toxic workplaces, right? And I noticed that at the root of that was really around the managers and the leaders, right? And as I went out into more of the nonprofit world, I really got a closer view of what leadership looked like. Now, I've worked with quite a bit of women, but I would say over the past several years, I've really seen this deterioration of leadership.
Mhm.
And we're talking about globally, I'm talking about here, government, community, corporate. It has just deteriorated. And I say that we're in a leadership crisis right now. I'm calling it. We are definitely in a leadership crisis. And so I started to see these patterns. And, I've gone through leadership development myself. I've been a leader, and I can see clearly what is happening. And there is this disconnection with people's values. And
Mhm.
there's a disconnection too with how people are living their lives and it's showing up. So, for example, when you go into workplaces, I said workplaces are like little societies. You have all of these people coming in from different backgrounds, different beliefs, different areas. Now they have to come in and they have to be able to work together towards one mission.
Mhm.
And what tends to happen is you don't have the leadership within those organizations who are able to nurture it and create healthy cultures. So now that's why you hear so much about this toxic workplace and people are getting burnt out. And you're seeing more of this profit driven type of management and leadership. And so there is definitely a breakdown there. And so I'm like, we need to do something about that. Because now people are, it's causing health issues, it's causing mental health issues. And particularly for women, it's causing some real issues. And I would say it's on the spiritual level, it's on the physical level, just holistically. So I am calling myself a leadership disruptor. I am here
I love that.
to dismantle that old model of leadership that we have known for so many years that has typically been ran, we know this, by older white men and men in general.
Mhm.
And where we're shifting to, and I'm sure your audience is tapped into this, they know we are shifting energetically. We're moving into a new space and a new era. We cannot take that with us. And we can't build a new future that we want to have with this old patterns, old blueprints, old operating system. And so my work is really to help us to get to the place where we can build something that's going to be whole and healing and good for everyone.
I love everything that you just talked about. And I couldn't agree more about, when we're living out of alignment with our morals and with
Yeah.
who we are, and even as women with our feminine energy. I came from the world of real estate, which was a lot of negotiating contracts and that type of thing. And it's such a masculine energy. And when we are forced into that, that's when we go into depression and different things. So I completely 100% understand what you're talking about.
Mhm,
So let
mhm.
me ask you a couple of questions. What inspired you to explore and create this leadership archetype?
Archetype.
Archetype.
So there's a couple of things. So first of all, I worked under some really poor leadership. So I had my own experience with that. And
Mhm,
so that was the first experience for me to say, I know that things can be done better as someone that had to work under that. But if all of us are really paying attention, right, we can see what poor and toxic leadership looks like right now. We see
mhm,
it in our country, and we're watching it in a lot of these profit-driven corporations. Now, I have a lot to say about that kind of leadership because I feel like if you ask someone who are some of the greatest leaders in history, and the first folks that probably pop up for a lot of us is like, we'll say, like Martin Luther King or Robert F. Kennedy, Mahatma Gandhi, or something like that, right? And the thing that they all have in common, right, that we tend to go to is they're all men, right?
mhm,
And their leadership is tied to some sort of social issue or or a nation, the fate of a nation.
mhm,
Now if I say, can you think of a female leader, right? And it's almost like we have to make that distinction because someone wouldn't automatically go there. And so you might say Ruth Bader Ginsburg or maybe Shirley Chisholm or even Cleopatra, right? But
mhm,
normally we would think men. Now we're looking at leaders, we're naming these leaders like folks such as, say, Steve Jobs,
mhm.
Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk. I'm just saying, right? Like we might start to name those types. And they're like, what makes them a leader? Really? And
Yeah.
so their leadership style is really about control and dominance, right?
Mhm,
And really controlling from the top. It's a top-down model that has been modeled for us over time. And so now it has put leadership in a box. And this box is built on patriarchy, capitalism, misogyny, you know? And so it's a model that really centers power and not people.
mhm,
So for me, I knew that as we moved into this new era, we can't be using these old models of leadership styles that we usually identify with, the democratic kind, the autocratic. Like we have these different names around leadership theory, and you learn all of this, in college. There are different types of leaders that are needed. And so I started to investigate that as I looked at generationally who's in the workforce, how those generations are working. Like we're at a time when there's about three or four different generations in a workforce and in one workplace. So if you've
mhm,
got from baby boomers down to Gen Z, I can tell you that the other half of that group is looking at work and the world differently. And so they are the future. And they want a different kind of leadership. They want something that is more collaborative, that has some freedom and flexibility to it, that is creative. So now it's time for some what I call emergent leadership archetypes. And so I created and came up with some different types of archetypes based on what we need in the future moving
Mhm.
forward. As I continued to do that, um, I started reading, and this was just on my spare time. And as I'm reading and researching, something started to bubble up in me from the book Women Who Run with the Wolves.
Mhm.
So, and it was all about women not trusting their inner knowing, this part that's just a natural part of who we are, right? This wildish nature, which which really is about our power, right? And for some reason we've suppressed that. We've hidden that. We pull that back. And so I said, there's a connection here with how this can coincide with leadership. Because too many of us as women leaders, you're one of them, Mindy, when we start to get out into the world, we tend to take on that masculine energy. And it's from a place of survival because we believe that we have to show up in this way in order to get what we want, in order to be taken seriously. And
Mhm.
that's why you see a lot of women who are in leadership. They tend to burn out pretty easily. They talk about feeling a disconnection with who they really are and what they're doing. They talk about having a disconnection even with their bodies, right? Their cycles become out of whack.
Mhm.
Everything just it doesn't feel right because they're moving in this masculine space. So for me, I wanted us to start identifying with different types of archetypes that can help us understand what's needed for the future. And so when I took the quiz, I created it. So I took the quiz, and my archetype is the catalyst, and the catalyst is a change maker energy. As soon as I saw that, I said, okay, yes, that resonates. And the key traits is they're bold, they're visionaries, and they're system disruptors.
Mhm.
So,
I love that.
right? I was like, okay, this works. And then, but there's also a shadow side to that, right? And this is the thing that we don't usually look at. So, you can tend to be burnt out and you can tend to be impatient or you become so driven that you're alienated. And so I wanted people to be able to have both of those, to be able to see the yin and yang of it and
Mhm.
to see that there is another way of showing up as a leader, especially for us as women.
Nice. I love this. So we're really recreating that old paradigm,
Yes, yes, yeah,
coming back in both our feminine and our masculine energies.
that's right. Blending them together because
Yes.
we need that balance, right? And I think that men don't know how to balance that. It's almost like men are afraid of softening a little bit, and they see it as a weakness. And then women, we just put it aside altogether and and then go into the masculine. And so we have to ask ourselves why that is. We have to ask ourselves, why do we want to wear this mask in society? And even if we show up more feminine, are we really fully being in our authentic self?
I love that you brought that up because as you were talking, one of the things I was thinking about was when I was, doing real estate full time and I'd put on the little dresses and the high heels and go out, but I was still shoving that feminine side down, that part of me that could have even shined brighter had it been allowed to come out.
Yeah.
But I felt like I was living in such a masculine world. I had to be, I had to be strong. I'm negotiating, three, four, 500,000 to well over $1 million contracts. And, you have to show up as that strong masculine energy.
Right.
So yeah, you just can't dress it up and put makeup on it and call it feminine energy.
You
So
have to embody it, right?
yes.
And that's a big thing that's missing because at the core of this work too, is the value system,
Mhm.
right? And you and I talked about this in our other interview. You know, we all know that we have values,
Mhm.
but how many of us are really allowing our values to guide us and lead us in our lives? And so, unless you are in touch with those and you are grounded in them and say, this is what's important to me and these are my values, you can't fully embody yourself, that person, that who you're supposed to be. So embodying that leadership means that you have to know those values. So one of the other things that I like to do and take clients through this as well is I've created something called the Great Leadership Pyramid. It's based on the ancient pyramids, right? That took they were intentional, they are precise, and they stand for centuries. And
Mhm.
so I'm taking leaders up these ascended steps that have them moving through to embody different aspects. So what you want to do is first you want to be someone that is very self-reflective, right? I believe that that is the core work right there. You have to be, as a leader, self-reflective, self-inquisitive, right, to be able to ask those questions. So that's a part of personal development, right? But you also want to be someone that's self-aware. There's studies on top of studies that show that leaders are not self-aware. And
Mhm.
so that is a huge thing when you're working with people, right? You want to be someone that is self-realized. You know yourself, you understand yourself, right? And you understand where you're going in your journey. And
Mhm.
then I go to the next step after that is self actualization and then self mastery. Now, this isn't something where you do a one, two, three, four, five, and then you stay at the top. I know people will move up and down that pyramid because that's just how life is. But we have to be willing to take that journey, to do that work. And that's the sort of stuff that will help us be grounded in our values and just help us be more effective and impactful leaders.
I couldn't agree more. As you know, I'm all about, grounding ourselves in our moral values.
That's
And
right.
when we're living within that value system, everything gets easier. That's when anxiety goes away, depression goes away. We're not shoving all those emotions down any longer. We're actually
Mm-hmm.
stepping into who we are at our very best self.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, how can a woman begin to trust her inner wisdom and her instincts, especially when it feels so uncomfortable and scary?
This is something that I still, wrestle with in trusting myself. But I think you have to be able to honor the journey, right? And be okay with that because what tends to happen is we think that we might be following our instincts, but we're really following some sort of conditioning, right? Some sort of
Yep.
a pattern. The
Mhm.
only way you can do that, Mindy, is really what I call returning to yourself, meaning giving yourself the time and space to get to know you, to
Mhm.
go deeper with yourself, right? To be able to ask yourself the tough questions and be honest about it. It's just you, right? And you
Mhm.
have to be willing to do that work. And until you start to open that up, questioning yourself and being self-inquisitive almost about everything and being investigative about why did I make that decision? What was that decision based on? Why did I just say what I just said? Right? Those are the things that will help you knock down some of those barriers to be able to trust yourself. It is a practice, it is ongoing. And to be able to realize where things are actually coming from within you. And so I would say the first thing is just really taking the time to sit down, return to yourself, get to know yourself, and doing that type of inner work. You hear people say this all the time, do this inner work. It's because it's important, right? It's because you have and not just meditating. Meditation that's different. I'm talking about peeling back the layers upon layers upon layers about who you are and
Mm.
why you're showing up the way that you are. And so that's one of the things that we're going to be doing in the Return to Sovereignty, which is building on the wild woman leadership archetype, is to really be investigative about the mask that we're wearing, right? And who we really are showing up about and facing ourselves in that way. So that's really the core of the work.
So I know a lot of the people listening to this they're going to be very curious to learn more about what it is, this program that you're talking about right now, and how they might be able to get involved in it.
So you can reach out to me on Substack. I do have a Substack. So Leaders is my Substack, or you can look for Marjorie Phoenix. And I'm Marjorie Phoenix on social media. And because this is a very small, intimate group of women, it's only going to be six of them. I want an opportunity to really connect with those women who'd like to be a part of it and really sort of talk you through it to see if this is going to be a good match. Because it's going to be 8 weeks of, I'm not even calling this a program or a course. This
Okay.
is a leadership portal. This is really going to be opening you up every single week. So, like, the first week is really going to be about awakening the wild within, right? Just pulling back those layers and looking at some of the roles and the expectations that have been expected to you. A lot of us, we're mom. That's all we know ourselves as. We're mom, or we're taking on the role of our career or even the business that we're creating. And so there are parts of us that we really want to see where that is coming from, why that's there, and also recognizing parts of our voices that have been silenced. Because, talking about your instinct is your superpower. And I think that's one of the most important things that we should be working on, is to really be able to listen to ourselves. Because the second week is going to tap into your body being an oracle, your body as oracle. This is about leading from those sensations and the energies within. So, getting out of your head and into your body and learning how to trust it. And, I know there are many times that we've felt things within us and we've ignored it or we've pushed it aside because of where we felt it in our bodies,
Mm.
right? And a lot of us, you don't always feel it in your belly, Mindy. Sometimes we feel it down in, our groin area, right? We might feel it in our throat, right?
Exactly.
And so being able to identify what is my body telling me right now, right? That's such an important thing. Um, and then, like in week 5, we're going to talk about rhythm, rituals, and right timing. So I believe in rituals. I believe that we should be using rituals as a way of self-discipline. And so that week, I'm going to have a special friend of mine, a special guest come on who's an evolutionary astrology, and she is going to get everyone's natal information to create a, um, an evolutionary astrology report that helps to align them to their leadership path and their natural and spiritual cycles and rhythm. And so I've been doing this type of work with my friend Audra for some years and using that along with moon cycles, or you can put it in place with your hormonal cycles. So it's really going to be magical in a lot of ways, but it's also going to be immersive and deep. And so this is going to be a way for women to really tap into that natural wild side of ourselves that we shouldn't be afraid of. We really shouldn't be afraid of.
This sounds absolutely amazing. And I'm really looking forward to just seeing the work that you're doing with these women, and the astrology chart sounds amazing. The whole thing. So yeah, is there anything else you would like to share before we say goodbye to everyone?
Well, okay. So first of all, the this journey will begin on June 10th. So there's that. So you can reach out
Mhm.
to me before then. But I will say this, we are in a specific time in history right now where the world needs leaders, but they need the right kinds of leaders. And
Mhm.
so I want everyone listening to this to know that you are the leader that the world needs right now. And so my role, I know, is to help to prepare and usher in these new leaders where the door is open, the stage is set. We just have to be prepared to step up and be able to move into that space together. I know what we're seeing right now. Everything looks chaotic and out of control, but I'm telling you, it is creating a soil for the new types of leaders of the future. And so I'll invite you to take my archetype quiz so you can see what your leadership archetype is. And that way, that can help to inform you and guide you as you're moving forward.
Oh, that's wonderful. So can we link all the links to
Yes, yes, I'll make
your
sure and get the quiz link to you and everything.
perfect? Well, thank you so much, Marjorie. It was so great talking to you today, and I know you are an inspiration to so many women. So I'm super excited to continue watching your
Thank
journey.
you so much, Mindy, for sharing space with me and looking forward to having more of these conversations, most definitely.
I am as well. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.